The story takes place in a very small town in the northeast region of the United States, in the summer before I went off to college in 2015. After I had graduated high school, my parents decided to move to a smaller, more affordable house about 45 minutes north into the mountains. We stayed in my childhood home because the public schools in my area were the best in the state, and my parents really valued my education. I ended up going off to an amazing university, and now I have an incredible career because of my excellent education. As most people in the US know, amazing public education usually means higher property taxes. My parents got to the point where they could not afford the taxes on their 4,000 square foot home anymore, and decided to sell it just after I had graduated from high school. Their home is humble and it sits on a beautiful piece of land on the side of a beautiful mountain. The trees are always so green, and there is a lot of wildlife around. They don't have many neighbors either, as their driveway is about 1.5 miles long, but this is what they chose to live in after I went off to college. In August of 2015, we moved into this new house. I wasn't planning on staying long as I was getting ready to head off to college as a freshman for the first time. We decided to have a little housewarming party with a bunch of family friends and my best friend at the time as well. My dad was manning the barbecue and my mom was making drinks, and we were playing with our dogs. It was a grand time and everybody was having so much fun. My dad had built a brick fire pit in our backyard. Just to set the scene for you there, the fire pit was about 30 feet from our back patio door, and we had a picnic table and other seats all around. Behind the seating was the tree line. It was so dark that sometimes at night, you needed a flashlight to see 10 feet in front of you. With the fire pit lit, you couldn't see someone unless they were either sitting next to you or across from you in front of the pit. My best friend had decided to stay the night, and we had asked my dad if we could make s'mores, as it was getting a little chilly as it does in the late summer in the northeast at night. My parents left us outside with my dog, Nino. Nino was a huge 100-pound black lab pit bull mix. He was such a loyal and incredible dog that my dad had trained as his right hand. He was our protector as he could run extremely fast, was very strong, and he alerted us when something went bump in the night. Side note, he passed away a week before I got married in 2022. He was 17 years old and lived an adventurous life, with my parents hunting squirrels, laying out in the sun, and running amok. Nino laid in between us, facing the tree line, and my best friend was to my right. Our backs were to the dark and dense tree line. Our first mistake. We were laughing, joking, and eating s'mores together, planning for the future and generally excited about going off to college together. We decided to play some music and we just relaxed, feeling content and at ease. It was the perfect summer night, until Nino had started growling. I saw his ears perk up and his head cocked to the side. He then sat up and continued to growl. My best friend and I both looked at each other, thinking Nino just saw a stray animal or something non-threatening. This area was known for lots of deer and rarely a coyote or wolf, as he was trained to help my dad hunt deer. We assumed that it was a buck or a fawn in the distance behind us. We went back to singing along to the music playing and talking about our fall 2015 class schedule. Again, Nino started growling. Our second mistake. We did not call out for my dad, and we didn't even think that there was a problem until Nino had started barking repeatedly, this time louder and more vicious. He stood up and started barking as if alerting us to activity beyond the tree line that we couldn't see. We stood up as well, the fire obscuring our view. My best friend took her phone and paused the music and turned on her flashlight. She started to walk towards the edge of the tree line with Nino by her side, still growling and barking, alerting us to not go any further and to call for help. We stood still in silence, listening. I was too afraid to even breathe at this point. She started walking into the woods, and when she shined her flashlight, she saw a figure. Somebody peering behind a tree. A man with green shirt and green pants on. About 5'11" with glasses too. We screamed and ran as fast as we could inside, leaving the fire unattended and this creepy man behind the tree. We did not know at the time where this man came from. We crashed through our front door, breathless with Nino tailing behind us, and I startled my mother, who was washing dishes and cleaning up from the party. She was talking to my dad about something that they saw on the news, and I think we cut him off mid-sentence to explain that there was a man dressed in all green lurking behind a tree in the woods. We didn't know how long he was there or if he was still there, but we were both crying. I remember feeling extremely sick, like I was going to throw up. My dad jumped up, grabbed his shotgun and headlamp, and ran outside with Nino. My mom gathered us into the living room, shut all the lights off in the house, and locked the doors. She told us to be quiet and that she was going to call 911. And as she did that, my best friend and I shook in fear. We were anticipating gunshots and screaming, but we never heard any. My mom, now on the phone with 911, described what we saw to the operator. I heard my mom say, "Oh," in an alarming way. At this point, my dad came back inside and my mom let him know that the police were on their way to us. Being in a small town on the mountain with less than 10,000 people means that we don't get our own police force. We get the state police every time there's a call made to emergency responders. My dad put his gun away and waited outside for the police to show up. To our bewilderment, they didn't just send one officer, but 10 and an entire SWAT team and a helicopter to circle the area. I mean, we were rightfully terrified. I was practically having a panic attack at this point. The officers came inside our home and asked my best friend and me what the man was wearing, what he had looked like, and if we were able to discern any scars or tattoos. We explained the weird matching green outfit and the glasses. The officer excused himself and alerted the police and the SWAT members outside of our description. They started to search the woods behind our home with guns drawn, flashlights, and a helicopter circling above. They advised us to stay inside and that they would let us know when or if they found something. After about 25 minutes, we got another knock on our door. It was not one but 2 officers this time. My dad let them in and they began to explain the situation. One officer explained that we must have seen in the news that a convicted felon from the prison about 20 miles away had escaped into the mountains. The police had set up a perimeter 10 miles around the prison, but the convict had escaped them yet again. The outfit that the man was wearing, as well as our description, signaled to them that the escaped convict was 100% lurking through our remote, densely wooded backyard that night. The all-green outfit was a standard issue for prisoners in my state then. They did not, however, find the man near us after 25 minutes of searching. He was still out there. The officers let us know that they're going to have a squad car stay and watch our house for a few days, as they were unable to locate the fugitive and believe that he's still an active threat to our safety. That night, and for 3 nights after that, we all slept in the living room together. My dad's shotgun was within arm's reach of him at all times. Later that week, we got another knock on our door from the officers stationed outside of our home. They let us know that the man was back in police custody and that we were safe. They advised us to get security cameras though, and they said how sorry they were that this had happened to us. After that, my parents spent about $10,000 on security cameras and fencing for our backyard. It's now all fenced in, and we have about 4 cameras to watch the tree line at all times. I guess you never know what will happen or what goes bump in the night. When I was younger and just got into online college, I got my first apartment. I had 3 jobs and one was third shift, but I was more than ready for independence. While I had a great time there, I did have one problem: my new downstairs neighbor. So, the other tenants are a bit older than I am, with one of them being an old man who'd lived there for about 20 years. The other was an older woman with a small kid, probably had been there for about 3 or 4 years, and in an empty apartment downstairs. I kept to myself, so I never really spoke to any of them before until I noticed that there was a new move-in, a man that seemed close to my age, maybe a little bit older. Black, greasy hair and a little overweight, but in my experience living here, people seem nice and I was happy to possibly have somebody to say hello to. That possibility turned sour really quick when a casual hello turned into, "That trash stinks," remarks from him when I was taking out the trash, and snide remarks under his breath when I've done nothing. Even remarking on my sister's lack of a bra when she came to visit me. Naturally, I was grossed out and annoyed that he had to comment on anyone, especially my sister, and I told the landlord. Nothing came out of it, of course. One day I was asleep and somebody came banging at my door. I had no idea who it was and my anxiety was beyond strong. I'm alone and never expected a knock that wasn't planned. It was the neighbor saying that I was being too loud and I needed to stop harassing him. I explained through a closed door that I was asleep and that I was not making noise. He left and stomped on the stairs while muttering and calling me a bee. My heart felt like it was beating out of my chest. I went back to bed only to hear him coming back up the stairs and banging at my door. When I had addressed him again, he said that I was harassing him and that he's calling the cops because I'm still making noise. I told him to ask the other neighbor because there's no way that I could possibly be making noise when he's on the other side of the building. He thanks me politely before stomping off and cursing and calling me the same thing yet again. I tell the landlord right away that one of his tenants is acting hostile and that I don't feel comfortable or safe, and he tells me that he'll look into it. I hear nothing for a week. It turned out that it was the old neighbor hitting the floor with a stick like one of those classic cartoons because the rude neighbor was playing music too loud. I swear that he should have known that, as I'm on the other side. It was like he had wanted an excuse to come speak to me. The following months, it only got worse. One day, I had walked out in a snowsuit so that I could play in the snow. I'm a big kid at heart. He had to remark on my clothing being unnecessary, even when there was 3 feet of snow outside. I forgot what I said in response, something like it's not his business, but he basically just said, "Screw you." I just walked off to go play in the snow. It gave me a little enjoyment because of the earlier interaction, so I went back home to get ready for work. The snowstorm only got worse, and I had just come back from my night shift. I see him alone in the parking lot with the car on and the windows up. I was on high alert as I carefully walked around and up the alley to my apartment. The second that I closed the door to go upstairs, I heard loud, wall-shaking music. It was him blasting music from his car, in a snowstorm at 3 a.m. I was surprised and confused because what was his reasoning? He did it until 8 in the morning, and I found out later that it was to spite the old neighbor for telling him his music was too loud. Soon, it all started getting serious, cursing in the hallway and playing music even louder, with the police knocking at our doors asking us about a noise disturbance, and now a mutual hatred amongst the neighbors at the guy who kept us all up. But that's not the worst part. I just got back from my night shift and it's 3 a.m. yet again. I'm dragging my tired feet over to the mailboxes that are right inside the townhouse door. As I'm looking through the ads and letters, his door opens at the top of the stairs. My stomach tightens, hoping that I don't have to interact with him, but it drops when he starts speaking unintelligibly. At the top of the stairs, he's gurgling and mumbling something. "What?" I said. but he repeats these same weird sounds again, only more aggressive. I felt that something was more than off, and I noped right around and out the door, heading back to my car. I thought that I would rather sleep in my car than possibly be attacked in the hallway, and as I'm having the thought, I hear the window above slam open. I freeze and then spin back around the edge of the corner. It's him, and he's looking for me out the window. I stand there for a moment listening to him, and he's speaking gibberish and yelling. I thought to myself that it was my chance to sneak upstairs, past his door and into my apartment. I sped up the stairs and past his door to the second flight of stairs. Right as I reach the top of the second flight of stairs, his door swings open with a big slam that makes me jump, and I hear him muttering and gibberishly speaking loudly while walking up the stairs. My heart is beating out of my ribcage as I'm simultaneously walking and fishing my keys out of my bag. Like a classic horror movie, I kept fumbling the keys looking for the correct one in the dark hallway as I hear him walking up the last couple steps. I mentally told myself not to panic as I spot the correct key, slide it into the keyhole on the first go, and swing the door open, and I practically launch myself inside before slamming it shut behind me. I pause and hold my breath as I hear him just 5 feet from the door, muttering gibberish and calling me something before walking back downstairs and out of the building. I watched him through a crack in my window blind, pacing back and forth, muttering, cursing, and at one point, screaming before walking off into the night. With a little bit of relief, I head to bed hoping that he doesn't come back. The next day, I get a text from the landlord. He says that the guy was arrested and that he wouldn't be coming back. Seems that he was off his meds again, and he attached a link in the text. Of course, I raised an eyebrow to that comment, thinking, oh, now you tell me. The following link that he had showed a mugshot and a description of his nightly activity, to include stealing from a Turkey Hill, threatening cops, and punching one of them, and previous to all of this it said, earlier in the night when he dropped his pants and rubbed himself against the window, and then ran around the town square while yelling. I never did see him again, just his family coming in and moving his stuff. I was just recently reminded of this story by another hitchhiking story on here. My dad used to tell me and my brother all sorts of stories from his youth hitchhiking down the East Coast. There are 2 that have always really stuck with me, and I figured if you guys like this one, I'll talk about the other one too. When my dad was 15, he left home in Massachusetts and hitchhiked down to Florida, where his older sister was living in Daytona. This event apparently happened on his trip somewhere in Virginia. He had been trying to hitch a ride outside of some city, though he could never remember which one. This happened in '76, and there were a lot of drugs done between then and now. And this really nice car stopped and picked him up. He and the driver get to talking, and the guy tells my dad that he's a surgeon at one of the local hospitals. He gives him a business card and tells him if he ever needs anything at that hospital, to give them his name. All seems to be going well, and he is apparently heading pretty far south for some family function, so it's a long way that my dad doesn't have to walk. He seems like a nice, professional guy, clean-cut and well-spoken. But then stuff starts to get weird. My dad's exact wording at this part of the story every time that he tells it. And the doctor starts giving my dad the side eye, and seems like he wants to say something but can't quite figure out how to say it. Of course, my dad is just sort of ignoring him because, as he says, I had been on the road for a while and hadn't had a shower or changing clothes in weeks. Then the guy finally comes out and says it. Can I suck? My dad was obviously taken aback by this, and he tells him no. Please, just a little. No. I'll give you $50 if you let me do it. No. How about you let me see it then? Can I see it? No. I think you better let me off here. And surprisingly, without any resistance, the guy does. He pulls off at a rest stop and he lets my dad out. Before he pulls away, he hands my dad that $50 and he tells him, "Sorry about that, man. I hope I didn't blow your mind or anything." This isn't super creepy, but I thought you guys might like it. My dad always says that the guy didn't seem like a bad guy, just really messed up. And honestly sorry to have freaked him out so bad. I have no way of knowing if it is totally true, except that my aunt says my dad told her the same story when he got to Florida just a few weeks later.